When Steel talks, everybody listens.
This is When Steel Talks, and we're very pleased to have the opportunity to have a chat, a sit-down chat with Dr. Brian Copeland, the inventor of the G-Pan. He's here in New York. And there's a lot to get to know about you, but first of all, let's start off by saying welcome. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
And the opportunity is long overdue.
Yes, it is.
For those who are a little bit unfamiliar with you, I don't think that there are that many people, but still, you are the Dean and Professor of the Faculty of Engineering at the University of the West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago, and that's the St. Augustine campus. And of course, you're also a former Fulbright doctorate scholar, University of the Southern California.
That's right.
And there's a lot to you, so let's get into it. Talk to us a little bit about Dr. Brian Copeland, but also in that, let us know how you got involved in Pan, where that first came from, the love, the instrument, the people. So,
well, I'll talk about me as I talk about Pan. When I returned from University of Toronto in 1980 to join the Faculty of Engineering, I worked in a lab. Developed a very close relationship with the technicians. I've always been hands-on from day one. I did a lab that was involving what we call instrumentation, which is measuring things like vibrations on machines and so on. And there was this friend of mine, Tessie Julian, who actually lives now in Long Island. He was a technician in the lab, and he was associated with Carib Tokyo. He was talking about all the problems they had. At that time, DJs were coming up. This is 1980. DJs were coming out, and the pans were moving, already moving out from the dance halls and so on, and the fetes and whatnot. And he was just upset about it. He said, well, okay, we think about it. And I realized that the labs I was doing had an impact on exactly that same scenario, because the same way you can measure the vibrations on a machine, you can measure the vibrations on a pan. All right, and I said, okay, let's give this a try. I got a couple of the guys were also interested in pan. This is the technicians, among the technicians. Boots was the Timothy. It was with gay flamingos at the time, flamingos now. And he's been a right-hand man, real support right through all the years. We sat down and we worked out 2 or 3 methods for directly amplifying the pan, no microphones. Basically, you make an electroacoustic pan. And that was my foray into the steel pan world. And it was then I realized how complex this thing was. At one point, I even call it a beast, because when we put those, basically we put sensors on the instrument. And this is before we did people do what they do now, which is if they don't use mic, they use like a Barker's Berry pickup that you use for contact mics on a guitar. They put that on now to the side of the pan. We made our own in those days. And we were quite successful. I worked with Stefan Gift as well. I wrote a paper on it. We were able to do quite well. Actually, we amplified all of Tokyo using that technique, the whole thing. 1987. The full band, roadside.
Okay.
Right?
The same side, all right.
Bases, because you're directly amplifying it, the bass is short like this, 18 inches, not the full length, but it's the same acoustic bass. I have a video of it, it's not too good. Let's put it this way, it really sounded good. I mean, first time we tried the bass, the speaker moved out and never came back in. That's to tell you how much we didn't realize how much power was on this thing. And that got me started on it. I've always been interested in doing stuff that's related to developing the country from its innovative side. I only realized that actually when I was looking back to my notes last year, that I was talking innovation even from those first days. I started to work at UWI. And I always felt very nationalistic, very patriotic about doing that stuff. That's why I came home. Because I felt that if any country could benefit it should be Trinidad and Tobago. And I thought that, we slightly below critical mass, but I think there's a little push in the right direction. By working together, we could, and I still think so. But that was part of the reason why I did it. I've never been really interested in pan before that. My father was a mass man. in the south. Actually, was quite good. It's Copeland.
Oh,
he did,
that's your dad?
Yeah, that's my father.
Did not know that.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep, so I grew up in a mass house.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, sequence and beats and evil stick smelling, you know. I grew up high. Evil stick. I learned all the second language, you know, in my sleep because I was downstairs.
Wow.
But Guinness Cavaliers played film for many years. That's right. So I knew Bobby. That's what turned down an opportunity to learn pan under Bobby. You know, yeah. And the only thing I remember from those days is Paris Burning, right? Bob tune, right? That's all I remember from those days. Coming down, but I got back into this intervention with Tessie in particular, Tessie Julian, and that work, and I wouldn't say the failure of it, but the fact that we couldn't get it to work as well as I thought we could, got me digging deeper and starting to explore more and asking more questions and so on.
So, the enterprise you executed with Carrot Tokyo at the point, the roadside, you were pleased with those results at the time? Actually,
I thought that they performed quite well at their launch. They launched actually not on the road, but at their camp. It was July 1987. I was just about to take up my PhD scholarship, and it sounded much better than I thought it would at that point in time. On the road, we had problems with feedback. Okay. When you put a bass next to close proximity to speak on a truck, you have trouble.
Yeah.
Actually, one time I saw the notes move on their own. That was scary. So they started to move slowly like this, visibly. So, okay, this is not good. And we sort of held back on that. I've started it back, but I've gone through other avenues right now. I don't think it's a viable activity at this point in time. I have to say, the one of the things I've realized that UE, and I've had battles with UE on this, their focus is on normal research and publication sort of stuff, get it out there, write your papers, get your promotion. I've never been very comfortable with that because your taxpayers' money is paying for me to be there. You're investing in all that equipment to do this research, and then you're just giving it away because to publish, I have to sign away a copyright. It's gone. It's gone. So all that work that's there, somebody's out here reading up all that stuff and using it to make their own technology. And you give them one day will come when they'll sell it back to you. I don't want to be that at all. I feel if you create it, you need to benefit from it. So a lot of my work has been very practical, on the ground. Must be. Not at that level.
The paperwork comes after.
After you do all that stuff, actually getting into the people putting into plan. That's why it was a deep conference.
Based on your experience and your involvement to date, what are your thoughts on the current state of the steel pan manufacturing and the tuning industry in Trinidad and Tobago as a whole?
Yeah, that's why I got into the steel pan issues project, because I felt that there was a need to build the industry around what I call steel pan technology. And there's a lot of technology buried in steel pan. Right now it's still very much artisan based, and the tuners have done very well for themselves. I know tuners who have built homes and the transit schools have done well. But I still think that the pan as an instrument has not been properly packaged and marketed, and then behind that now we put the manufacturing industry. We still don't know what it takes to start from scratch and to manufacture that instrument. We don't know what's going on in the process. And I think that there's still a lot more to learn. There will still be a part that requires human intervention. There's no two ways about that. But in order to really capture a market, you have to have manufacturing capability. And the first part of that is knowledge. And the second part is that to tune that knowledge to automate your process so you can ramp up as much as you could.
Production to meet demand.
We can't even ramp up to meet the school demand in Trinidad.
Okay.
Right? So part of the project, a lot of people don't know this, was actually to look at that. There is a whole set of equipment that we bought that's sitting down in Macoya, running dry. Huge guillotines, rolling machines. We bought a special machine out of Italy that does the top, so we can spin the tops of the drums right there. We prefer the welding process rather than the normal pans.
This is regarding to the G-pan? Or this is a...
This is general. We can make pans of any size and any form, so we do that right now using some of that technology.
So what is the holdback in putting everything into practice? You say you have the machines.
Yeah. A certain government found that things shouldn't go up particularly.
Which is interesting because that's one of the questions you wanted to touch on. The GPAN project, an initiative that was fostered and funded by the previous administration of Trinidad and Tobago, and there came a change in government. Things are not exactly where maybe your team thought that the steel pan industry as a whole would have been at this point in time. To what do you attribute that particular situation as it is existing right now?
I think the major factor is ignorance. I think we were pushing so fast and so far ahead. A lot of people didn't understand what we were really trying to do. Even the previous administration, I have to admit, they just wanted this new pan that targeted the problems of the older one. There's no way you can do that in 2 years. So we started with the G-pans, and we still have to test the G-pan. For the full G-pan, if you look at the patent, it's a very special design. That has not been tested. But I think because of the state of development, the maturity of trying to be in terms of understanding innovation, what it is, what it takes to be innovative, I think that a lot of what we saw over the last 2 years is a direct consequence of that. There might be other things involved. I'm sure there are other things involved, but I can't help but say that when I speak to people and I hear what they have to say, I get the distinct impression they don't understand, first of all, the cost and the effort it takes to get into innovation, but the potential benefits that could come from it. So when we were doing the G-pans, it was just the tip of the iceberg. That was just the start of it. That was supposed to bring in a whole set of technology that would help build the industry. The tuners, we had catered for tuners. We know that they like to be secret, so we said, okay, let's give them tools. And I have in fact given tools to tuners to try. They haven't tried it by and large. Let's create a space for them, so if they don't have the tools at home when they workshop, they could come in with under the cover of confidentiality. That was one of the plans that we had, and it never materialized. The whole patenting aspect was to give us some space so we could work, because in a sense the G-pans, in a sense, and I have to say this, I'll say it, it sort of covers the traditional pan in a sense, so you have some room. And it focuses the attention of the world back to Trinidad a bit. So you have the marketing ploy in there. In fact, I would say I didn't spend money on that G-pan launch. The government did. They spent $1 million. And I had never understood the power of marketing until I saw what happened there. Because years after, people were still talking about the G-pan. Then I understood the power of it. Marketing is what sells. And I'll be unabashed and unashamed to say that we're about selling. Because if at the end of the day, you do all that fine work and your people can't eat, you're not done squat.
That's true.
See it? So there was so much more to be done. And as I started off by telling you, there's so many innovations in the pan. Our aim was to exploit every one. That's why we went electronic as well.
The DeFi.
That's right.
Percussive harmonic instrument.
We basically said that's part of the invention. The pan itself embodies about 2 major inventions. There are a couple of others on there as well. First one is just coaxing that sound from steel in a very melodic way. I've just come from a percussion society in San Francisco, that conference there, where it was a session at a bigger conference. And I've listened to other percussive type instruments, and the only one that's really melodic, and you could say it's like xylophones and marimbas and so on. But the pan, in terms of that form and be able to coax it from a single sheet of metal, that's an amazing scientific wonder that people didn't understand. And even now, scientists are digging into it. We still don't have all the equations, we still don't fully understand it. That's marketing too. You can use that. It embodies a layout. If you look at the tenor pan, that note layout, awesome, fourth and fifth that Tony came up with without reference to any musical text. This guy comes up with this.
Anthony Williams.
Yes, and he was trying basically to reduce dissonance between notes. And out comes this fourth and fifth layout that the music industry has known for 400 years. He didn't know that. But it turns out as well that it is the easiest form to play. If you look at the hand movements, I think there's a guy up here called Bolden, who wrote a paper, and I think he's Atto's uncle, something like that. Lives somewhere up here, I can't remember, Bert, I think is his first name. And he wrote an interesting article that Pat Bishop had shared with me, showing the hand movements for different movements and so on the fourth and fifth versus the other styles where it's just of the day. I mean, it's much less energy to play. And there's work that's coming out very soon that will show there's a natural human connection to that fourth and fifth layout. That's marketing too. That's how the fight came to me. It says, what if you lift this off, this instrument, and put it on electronic form? Now all those panists who are accustomed with this kinesthetic have a whole different world that's available to them. It doesn't kill the pan. It just gives them a bigger canvas to work on. Those are the kind of things we were looking at. And all those were led to manufacturing. All of those were led to manufacturing, one form or the other, because who has to supply it? So it was really a big plan that it really wasn't fully formed as yet. To develop the entire industry would have evolved over time if it had been given space, but it wasn't.
Back in 1975, at the Caribbean Research Institute of Trinidad and Tobago, which is better known as CARIRI, there was an initial steel band research project. I believe Ron Dennis, he was the person who designed the hydroforming press, the original one for Pan. And then Dr. Clement Imbert was the chief project.
No, I think Clem worked there under Richard McDavid. Clem, there's some. I'll clear up all those facts for you.
Well, the word is out there that Clement Imbert was the project engineer at that point, so there's some stuff to be cleared up.
He was project engineer.
Okay.
But Richard led the project.
Okay. Richard McDavid.
Who
just passed.
Yeah, he just passed. Keith Maynard, who worked with me on the FI, was also there. In fact, Keith, conceived of the FI. It was way back as that time. A crazy musician, right? And who else was on it? It slips me now, but I know those are the three people I distinctly remember. Keith Bell, who also died, was on the G-Pan project. He was a metallurgist on the project as well. So it really and truly was a nice initiative.
So, with the 1975 initiative, what do you know about that? You know, I know it's before you actually got into it, but what is your basic knowledge of what the hydroforming process was back then? And I would like to have a comparison, if you think there is one to begin with, by the hydroforming process that's now been patented by, I think, George Meyer and Harvey Price. Right, two Americans who did that a few years ago. They patented a hydroforming process for the Caribbean steel pan. What, if any, comparison is there between their patent and the original process that was put together by Ron Dennis back in the 1970s, 75, and on which Clement Imbert worked?
We didn't think that the Whitmire patent was original and innovative. We didn't think there was any enough new stuff in it with regard to the pressing aspect, because that patent to us described a known process. If you want to stamp something, that's the way you do it. So we didn't think it was original, but the examiners did. So the answer to your question is that basically they would have been more or less this similar processes. There are many different ways to press, to do metal forming by pressing. I'm not sure. I think Clem and his team, but maybe Clem himself, just tried a process called the Guerin process, where they use a rubber bladder that presses against the steel against the a mold. I know that they also worked on a spin forming method. That plant is actually with Michael Cooper now at Panland. But that original process, and I have some samples from the press I went to Saab, have them in my lab. And Niels has the rest of them. They were pretty good actually. They got down to the grooves. You know, I didn't think they could do that, but Storchester knows they actually did grooves. When I do that conversation with Keith Maynard, I'll ask him how those tests went, because I've never really seen a full report on the tests that were done on the pans that were actually made. But coming back to your question, I think that the two processes would have been very similar. I don't think the Whitmire one was that
unique enough to be granted a patent.
No. The thing where it was unique is in the use of stainless steel on the skirt. I'm not sure anybody did that before. I'm not sure it worked that well according to them. They actually, I'm sorry, they did stainless steel totally, so top and side. But stainless steel was done by the original press out of Korea. The samples I have, historic piece, one that disappeared off the docks when it landed.
Oh, indeed.
Yes, and
things
then reappeared.
Yes,
but then reappeared about 4 years ago.
4 or 5 years ago.
Yes,
right.
in somebody's backyard, no names mentioned. So, but we have that one in the lab. I think they're quite similar.
With regard to the way the previous administration in Trinidad and Tobago took the initiative, even though they had a different vision as to let's see what we can do with regards to your invention, which would be the GPAN. And the current administration, they don't seem to be that enthusiastic. I mean, you go from being the recipient, a joint recipient of one of the highest honors in the land, of Trinidad and Tobago, the Chiconia Gold, along with your team members, for the work done with GPAN,
that's right.
to what appeared to be a questioning of your integrity with the incoming of the new administration. Do you have any idea what happened and how you went from one place to that present place?
Can you spell Trinidad politics?
Okay, I think that about says it all. Okay.
No, I that's why I said we are not mature. And to me, when you have a limited resource, or resources are not infinite, you can't afford to be in that state. So I think it's particularly sad. I think the current administration has now realized its mistake, hasn't said so. I think it has, and I hope we can recover. I really and truly don't care who's in government, as long as the best is done for Trinidad and Tobago.
And for the national instrument.
The national instrument is a flagship. It's a flagship of the country. It has to be recognized as such, regardless, and everything has to be done to ensure that every single Trinidadian knows how to play it, how to use it, knows its history. I know that there's another initiative that's very interesting. It just happened last week, so I hope I'll break the news that pan tuning is going to be taught to school teachers. It's not music, the tuning.
Tuning, the art of tuning.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
Science and the art.
Art and science, that's what it is. We actually have one course that does it at UWI. We have engineers do it in their final year. It's a small class, but it's enough. We can't have them too big. We've done it about four times in the last 10 years. I intend to do it every year, but I was glad to see it introduced in the schools. So you see some things are happening even now, and I think that some of it is quite positive.
Okay. For those who are new to the term GPAN, because it's not something that's world renowned like steel pan, in layman's terms, could you discuss that briefly? What is the GPAN? The instrument. You have 4 different voices in the instrument, but I'll let you take that.
Yeah, it's so many things. So I don't understand. The GPAN was created while we were drafting the patent.
It's interesting.
Because we had a need to be a patent. If we had to solve the problem that the Prime Minister asked us to solve, we don't think we would have had a very good chance of patenting. You have to show distance from what's known. And I didn't think that we could have done that. So we needed to have created a whole new environment, a whole new instrument in a sense. And so we just said, okay, what's wrong with the pan? Well, wrong with the pan. You have to be careful saying that, right?
What can be improved upon?
Thank you, right? It's much better. Trouble there, right? But we targeted it. There's one problem I always have with it, which is the dissonance you tend to get, which is good sometimes, like, Juve morning. I don't want to do another pan, but that, listening to, but on a concert stage, you don't want that. And so what began to emerge was, all right, what can we do with the pan in terms of the length and breadth? And now we start talking about market segments and markets you haven't even touched, because there are some people who will not touch the current pan. All right, and so we looked at this instrument and we said, let's look at improving it. The first problem was tackling the inner notes. That's the one problem the Prime Minister had pointed out, and he played pan by the way. And then the second one was, of course, you need to complement the notes, because they're only 29 on the tenor. So putting 36 notes on a small drum, some people have done it, Augustus has done it, but I doubt very much as to the quality. So when you're writing, we needed a bigger pan. People have done big pans before. We need to strengthen the rim, because you don't want the torsion that occurs. It's very, very slow, 15 cycles a second. You don't see it, you could feel it. and I could understand that because a little bit of modulation on your notes. In the patent itself, the ultimate G-pan, as I call it, is one that is really two pans in one. It's got an inner segment for the innermost set of notes, which will be 12. You can put it in a concave form, or you can put it in a convex form. So you can imagine a pan that comes down like this and then like that. And that's because the G-pan in its biggest size is so deep, and it's causing some backaches. So
make sure you're strong with it. Okay.
So that allows those inner notes to come closer to you, and you can use different materials because they actually completely separate, isolated acoustically from the rest of the instrument. We've tested the whole approach of cutting a pan after it's made. You'd be surprised how much of that sound remains even after it's cut. And that's what gives us hope that in fact this thing we have not tested. That's the full G-pan. So it's many things in one. It's new technology. It's use of quality steels, which everybody, people kind of know you need to use particular quality and all that stuff. Different ways in which you can get the sound out through what we call resonance, resonator effects. So I think there are 4 classes of resonators we use. One is the plain one, which is the one that people see now. What they don't realize that we do a lot of treatment inside of those drums. So for example, on the basses, which people absolutely love, we use damping materials on the inside to stop the rattling. And the attempt is to get most of it as clean as possible. Only the air must vibrate, not the sides. And we use reinforcement as well on the mouths, because that's where most of the vibration takes place. So there's a lot that's not seen that people don't see. The whole range of sizes from 18 inches all the way to 37, that's captured in the patent as part of the claims. And that basically what the instrument is as far as technology is concerned. Then we said, okay, let's stretch it a bit further and see how it to be used. And that's when we came with the overlapping sections. Said, okay, let's look at the soprano pan, where we renamed it soprano. Jimmy Philip, my friend, always calls it soprano. And 36 notes as the standard right through, as much as we can. So you got 36 for the double second, 36 for the G3 mids, and for the 6 bass, we couldn't make 36. So
that's 2.5 octaves.
2.5 octaves there, which is 5 notes per drum, and which actually has been experimented with some other variations right now, between size and shape and number of notes and whatnot. So what it is really 2 things. One is technology, and the second one is form of the orchestra. Now it's interesting to note, if I'm talking too fast, let me know. But the interesting thing about the instrument is that when we patented in the States, they said you don't have one patent, you have 2, and we have to split it. That's the law. You can't have 2 inventions in one package. So now I have not been informed as to what's happening with the patenting, because the G-pans belong to the government for on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So I've not been kept in the loop in terms of how many countries they've succeeded in getting the patent filed in. And I don't know if that second one has been filed, if it's been granted. But I know that it was separated out for filing. That had to do with a formula for specifying note placement and all that sort of stuff. That's what that patent was. I didn't expect it to be a separate patent, but they said that.
So the paperwork is left to the people who are best seen to that, like the agents?
Yeah, that's left to the agents to fight over it, because it's the same technical document. It's the same technical document that they use to do it, and they just name it, I don't know, A, B, or C, or whatever. The main thing is that what we have, and this to me is the most important part of the G-pan, is a piece of paper that says this came from here.
From Trinidad and Tobago.
That's right. In the first part of that document is a description of how the traditional pan is made.
So therefore the claim on the traditional pan is inherent.
That's right. That's right. And all the guys who were involved in bringing it up to the fore, they are also named in the first part. We took care to do that. So that establishes a ground, and nobody could cross anymore. Nobody could come and say...
And the patent for that has been granted?
That 61 countries, because it's embodied in the G-pan patent. So the G-pan basically has taken care of the traditional pan.
Which was the idea of the original administration to begin with?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So we have some defense, not in terms of laying claim to the traditional pan. I don't say laying claim, saying you can't make it. you can't make it a claim that you came up with it.
Yeah, you can make it.
Yeah, you can't claim it as yours. That's basically what it is.
The National Symphony Steel Orchestra, NSSO, they utilize only the family of G-bands.
Yes.
What is the status, do you know, with the NSSO? Are they still performing?
Yeah.
And what has been the feedback of the sound of the instrument utilizing or utilized by NSSO only for the G-bands?
Yes. The NSSO was in stasis for a few months, but they have restarted. Okay. So that's why I told you that I think things are turning a bit now. And I think they last went to China with those instruments. I think they're still in transit, quite frankly. So that's how recent it was. The feedback we got was mixed. As I said, everybody loved the bass. I loved it. I'm ODJ, so I love the bass, right? Kind of thing. And I've heard complaints about the upper sections, the frontline instruments, and I've always said that I don't like them either. I don't think we got to where we wanted to on those in particular. It may be the tuning. I have to be very careful saying that.
It's because you have a team of tuners.
Yes, speak your livelihood and thing. But I think that when you create a new form, you have to sit and work with the people who are the artisans in the field. We never had time to do that. They were always busy, and we were always busy as well. What we found is that at close to tuning with the original instruments, just after tuning we were fine. Then very quickly they would come out. And we now know why. A lot of it has to do with the thickness of the playing surface itself. A lot of tuners feel that you can get better quality by thinning the notes. Our equations say the opposite. So there's some things that science, I think, needs to look a bit more closely at, because maybe they're listening to something that we're not. But there's a little bit of a dichotomy there in terms of what you need in the middle ring to make sure the note rings true and clear, and that it stays ringing true and clear as well. There are tuners who work on the normal pans, the normal size ones. They claim they've been able, and for the ones that we make, they've been able to get very good sounds there. So some other things going on. I remember one guy commenting that maybe the pan is too big, and he does have a point, because when you have one surface like that, you hit any part, that sound's going to go, it's going to find the rim, it's going to bounce back. You get a kind of echo inside the material, and it could cause all kinds of impacts, if you like, on the sound that you get. So it could be that size is the issue there. It could well be. We just haven't had time to look at it. If that is the problem, then the G-pan I described, the two pans, will take care of it.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's still work to be done. It was never a fait accompli.
So do you think that moving forward, that there might be a restarting of endeavors? I mean, some of the people now, Keith Bell and Ralph McDavid have passed on, but you were there, Clement Bear is there, and there are some other people. Do you think there's a possibility of things restarting and perhaps moving forward, improvements?
I think so, and I'm not ashamed to say we need money. It takes money to make this thing happen.
Funding from the government or from corporate?
I'm kind of afraid to go back to government, but
somebody has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, but the thing is that when you're that small, government is the main, the main source. Companies in Trinidad and Tobago are not, they're not as adventurous as ones out here.
Well, we think government, because it is a national instrument of Trinidad and Tobago.
Exactly.
So considering the declaration, you would think that to improve on something like that.
I'll let you make the case to me. So,
easier said than that, I'm sure.
Yeah, but seriously, if it has to be, then no problem. I think what the issues we had with this last one is that we really truly didn't have an agreement, And you normally takes on money only when they have an agreement, but we're moving so fast, we couldn't even stop for it. And when government got the ownership of the patent and the trademark for the G-pans, they just stopped pushing. And they just kept on the funding. So we were left open, I think, vulnerable because of that. That wouldn't happen this time if I mean, we could be more sedate. We know the field a bit better now.
Yeah.
I don't think there's been a project as big as this one in Trinidad ever, and certainly not one with that kind of focus, which is we are doing R&D, but we're doing it for commercialization.
And for the benefit of the people.
For the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because we want to build that industry. You know, and we were certainly doing that. We had 10 young people working on the FI side, and 6 old people working on the GPAN side.
What's your experience with people?
It's just a number. But what we saw, the aim was always form a company, get it going. Business plan was ready, everything was well set. Just looking for funding for investors. Towards the end of the project to take it off and basically stop. What we have to do now is pick the pieces up. The world has changed a bit. Revisit the marketing. We know the technology a lot better now. Let's say we know the field a bit better now. I think within the next year you'll see some changes happening. There's some things I can't speak about. Okay. That's happening. It's confidential.
Let us know when it's no longer confidential.
The minute it happens. That is going to make some dent on the traditional pan.
No pun intended.
But I think you'll see some things happen. In a way, it's happening already.
Okay.
We've seen some very positive signs.
In 2009, when one could say that might have been the first foray in the national stage, with regard to 5 of the major steel orchestras in Trinidad and Tobago coming out with some of them in their ranks in competition. We're talking on Phase 2, Despers, All Stars, Trinidad All Stars, Exodus, and getting one Skiffle Bunch. Right.
Yeah, they were like our test band.
They were the vanguard.
Yeah.
Any more steel orchestras utilizing the GPAN at this point?
Not the original GPANs. At least 4 or 5 bands, a couple from the east. I know there's one in San Fernando, San City. Everybody's running on the bases.
Yeah, you said they're beautiful, right?
Yeah. And some took the full size ones, and then when we started to make 24-inch drums, everybody started to go for those as well.
The small ones.
Small ones. And but it's closer to the size and everything, and I do admit there's portability. I was really sorry to see some guys from Skiffle Bunch lifting up a whole rack of G6 bases, all in one to put on a truck. Right? So it's like, okay.
That must have been a bit hard.
Painful, I'm sure, by the next day. But by the way, I always tell people when they come to Mollywood, I ask them if they've ever hefted a grand piano. But
no. You don't piano. No.
But the small ones, now we see people using them for the tenors and the double seconds, the frontline pans. That's working out very, very well.
Do you like the sound of it?
Love the sound of it. They can specify any size they want, but most have gone for that size. Still welded just like the G-pans and everything, top quality steel, just like the G-pans. And they're singing well, they're tuning well. Pantravigo has one outside the office, everybody comes and take a knock on it.
Where is the steel coming from?
We ordered from a company in Ohio, but we specify the metallurgical content. That's in the papers actually. If you read the papers, it's well known. It's like 1006 steel.
The gauge?
The gauge is between, the G-pans, we went between 1.2 and 1.5 millimeters.
Right.
We tested all of those.
Okay.
My preference always for the thicker ones, but that will make the pan heavier. And those seem to work very well. We haven't played with metal, with the actual content to see that they can improve. I know Dudley Dixon in the UK, he's played around with some different types of steels and he swears by some of them. They have different standards to the US. But what you try to do with those steels is stay away from what we call inclusions, which is really impurities. Steel tends to take up the impurities from the iron ore, from the iron ore, depending on where it's mined. So you can almost look at steel and you can tell, well, where it came from, because you can't lose all of it.
Yeah.
But they can improve the purity by basically passing it through the mill and again and again. So you can decide, what level of impurity that you want, and then you can then use that for your instrument. Low impurities will ensure that when you sink, the chances of tearing is minimized.
Okay.
And it also means that it's very uniform with respect to the sound and whatnot from the instrument.
You mentioned Camp Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
Have you played yourself?
I played all of 8 songs on the steel pan. Right. I have a pretty good ear, so I could, especially for something, I can pick up pretty quickly.
Okay.
But with Tokyo, that was a lovely relationship. I think Beresford was the captain there at the time. Interesting dynamic on the social side, you know. With Tokyo, I'm actually not remember. I don't even remember that. But we did, as I said, electroacoustic pans for them from front to back. And basically those were pickups. We use what I call electromagnetic pickups, just like a guitar, on there, on everything down to the bass. And they were supposed to test that on the road in 1987.
Right, which they did, yeah.
88, Carnival 88, that's it. Yeah. 87 they launched in 87, in July 87. They had one more test and then they were to go on the road, and it didn't happen, actually. It didn't happen, as far as I know. I think Teddy Mohammed was supposed to be the person providing the sound, and that didn't happen.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next time I was on the road was with Rhapsody, which is a band that uses... They're from Arima, a small family band from Arima. Awesome guys.
They were on a truck with some fives, right?
That's right, these all fives now.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they played next to Marshall and Kess in
they
2011.
Sounded really good a few years ago.
Yeah.
It was...
Yeah. And
the sound that came out of them was like, oh my.
Must be in We Beat.
No, it wasn't in We Beat actually. It was during the Carnival. It was Carnival Tuesday. They were on the road.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal.
No, they packaged their music in a lovely way. They, to me, are a big experiment because even when we were doing the electroacoustic bands, we saw that it was new technology and that most likely the pan culture would have to change to capitalize on it fully. So we knew that small bands were it. I would not touch a larger acoustic band. That has its sound, has its character, that has a market if it's done well. Not at all. I'm trying to create new space. And it didn't work too well with the electroacoustics cost and everything else. But with the Phi, because of the increased dimension, of performance, you can get a lot more out of it. So that's what allowed them to play the UE FET and everything else. They actually packaged that thing. They got two wine girl, and
the sound was interesting. To my ear, it sounded really.
No, but listen,
really good.
as you, I told them. I remember once they were in the early days they were playing around with it, and now we work with samples. So we'd actually sample the G-pans, and we had put those G-pans on the Phi, and they were using G-pan basses, which would not sample well, and they were happy with it. I had to ask them, are you cool with this? And they said, well, yes. I said, but so when you go in a FET and you're playing, and you play after a big band, DJ coming after you, you start to play, you don't find people walking away and you're going to make phone call and go to the bathroom, go to the bar, and all kind of stuff. Say, well, yeah. Say, well, there's a certain thing you have to do to hold people in effect at Carnival time. I'm sorry, right? And if you like your music, that's fine for you. You could put it on an iPod and listen to it. That's a quote unquote from one of the band members, right? So, but if you want to capture people, you have to have the big pong on the bass. You have to have the shrill parts coming out of people. You have to grab them somewhere or the other. You look at variety. And they thought about it, and they came out with a singer, they came out with Olatunji, they came out with, they put the Phis in. The guy on the bass who I absolutely love because I'm a bass man myself, right? He switched up plucked bass on it. He uses the pan bass occasionally, but he went to a plucked bass which has a deeper low than a normal pan bass. And it has some highs on top as well to give it the punch, right? And when they put that package together, it was awesome. So I said I'm unashamed because that in 2011, those guys made money. And hey, it has to be self-sustaining. That's what it takes. And you can take your small enclaves and do the real rich pan stuff at times that you select. but you have to be self-sustaining on the things that you have to do. And this is what you have to do. You have to make money. All right? So they performed on the greens. We first want to put stage and thing on there, and they allowed us because it's pan after all, right? So we took that advantage. And I remember the first day, it was 2010. We playing, and I had a hunch what would happen. The shop pass just said, "What?" And she sang with the band. I have a shot of those, and if you see people in the crowd, I asked a friend of mine, "What last you see that happened with Pan?" Right? And then Kes came by, and the same thing happened. Never happened with Pan. Right? And it's simply because there is the bands have, I'm not going to take from them, they're very vibrant. They're super vibrant. I mean, young.
You have the youth component, and then you have the marketing component, and you have the financial coming together.
Exactly.
All right. So on the topic of the FI, there was an open public schism between the government and the percussive harmonic instrument, the FI, which you've just spoken about in glowing terms.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Nice twinkle, yeah.
Yeah. Talk about that, please. Talk about the schism and everything else that you can.
Well, I'll start from the output, which is that when I look back, it's all part of the course.
Yeah.
I think it's part of us growing up again. But what happened there was that when we filed the FI patent, it's actually called AFAMS, patenting was a different name. The owners were listed as the inventors, which is Keith Maynard was really called the whole thing. Brian Copeland, Marcel Byron did a lot of electronics, and Earl Phillip, who actually is one of the gospel pioneers. There was no problem with it until this administration came in and said, well, that shouldn't be. Our contention was, well, when we had our verbal agreement with the government, they didn't have a problem with it.
Verbal.
Yes, that's the problem. So that's where the war came. I thought it could have been resolved by just a sit-down discussion and a chat. But they were adamant that it should be so. We were saying, well, in my mind, now that it became an issue, I'm looking at what had happened with the GPAN, which is nothing at this point in time, in the ownership, and knowing that the country was so immature. What I saw was the possibility of the project being killed if ownership was transferred just like that. So the battle ensued. And it's not a nice thing facing your government in court because they have all that money. They could sue you from now till beyond your death, and you have your family to take care of.
Not to mention the hit to your reputation.
As Mom said in the James Bond movie, get the job done. All right, that's what I'm here for. Okay, my name will fix itself. I'm not. It's not. People ask me why I'm not too concerned about it. But that was the contention. In the end, we negotiated a settlement. We went that way because even though we knew we had a very strong case, our courts are number one, and number two, if we had stayed anymore, the whole thrust with respect to the FI would have lost that marketing position. It's already lost some. The time when FI should have been launched was last year when Nicki Minaj had it in that video.
Yeah.
It's just still 100 million views. So if I come 20 seconds out of however many minutes that is at 20 million views, I'll take that. That's a lot of views for the eyes that looked at it. It was a real good piece of marketing that was absolutely for free because we just walked in and they liked it and they put it on. That was the time to launch it. So we thought that in order to save what we done, because we all worked a lifetime on this, well, Keith and I, Master's half a lifetime, but we thought that it's best to negotiate, accept the settlement, which is hand it over to me, which I think is a good place for it to be, and then take it from there. And let's get the country built. Okay, so that's the case basically. Yeah, in a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
Yes.
I'll
write the novel later.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay. You're an engineer, first and foremost, and there is a nexus, not even between, but among arts, science, music, engineering, technology. That is at the base of all that you have been doing with regard to the GPAN and the FI, it's important, of course, to have that understood across all levels to even maybe provide an interest in moving forward as opposed to an antagonistic stand, for want of a better word. In government, when you find you are relating to people to relate your vision to facilitate funding, support, do you find that there is an issue there? Do you find like-minded people who can translate what you're saying to the people who literally are holding, you know, the funds?
Very difficult.
Okay.
And especially in a third world country, I think that's what makes us third world. Is that lack of understanding of why it is necessary to make those kinds of investment. The mere fact that it took, Career Project was 75. PAN was way beyond that. I mean, if we had a government or governments that understood that nexus that you described, we wouldn't be here today. We would have been probably looking at a fourth generation type of PAN, because they would have gotten in. The very first day P7 came down, we were playing whatever you played, Mary Little, had a Little Lamb or whatever. Somebody would say, oh my goodness, that's a new stuff. What can I do with it?
To invest and find out.
Exactly, exactly. And we tend, part of our nature, we tend to overlook things that look too trivial and simplistic. But oh my goodness, bring it somewhere else and they'll dig that thing so deep you'll find out.
I think also it had to do with the people who originated.
There was a status thing, the whole socials.
Hadn't been originated, for instance, in England or in Belgium, it would have been way down the road. But you come from, you know, the people who are, they would say, just basically the fabric of the community, to be diplomatic about it.
But you know, really. Even the lowly in the US understand the whole process of innovation. They understand that if I come up with you come up with a new idea, that whole culture, I think, is there. It's here. It's what makes you first world.
But lowly is a social concept. That's the first thing. It's a social concept.
Well, that determines the push back on you. Your understanding what you're going to get is what's going to push against it, and that did not happen as much. What we were doing is we were having fun with it. That's what it was. So it's not just that, it's two sides to it as well. And again, it comes to how mature we were. And the governments are just a snippet of the people.
So right now, considering that you want to move forward, are you finding any more doors opening in terms of people who are actually listening and trying to understand?
Well, I've gotten a few more friends back, but I haven't. This is fairly recent, and the ink has not dried on what we were supposed to do, and so I would say that I haven't really pushed it as yet. I think we're tired, quite frankly, and we're now getting that steam to move forward again. So I can't even answer that question at this point in time. I suspect the answer will be yes. There's a lot we think to be made from both of the innovations that came through that project. The GPAN has been in stasis for a while, but we're seeing offshoots from it that are developing. That's what I will talk about later when it's okay to do so. And the FI, we have to do some readjustment because electronic products, their lifetime on the market is very short. So we have to do some readjustments. We've actually gone Android with it. In the time when we were in submarine mode, we said. But we didn't stop, but it didn't advance as far as we could. But back to the question, it's hard to say yes or no. And I'm a forgiving type of person. And as I said, I chalk it up as just what we had to do. Yes. It's us building and growing as a nation, I think, as I see it. I'd say there's a couple of things that have hurt me through the last couple of years. Because the family has taken it quite hard and so on. I did lose my mother in the process. That wasn't nice. But there were 10 young people on that project. Now this project was always bigger than PAN. We viewed it as a pilot project for showing the nation how to innovate. We feel that we have to be ready for when that oil money is done. And the way to do it is to have a stronger culture of innovation in our people. that makes you more able to survive when Mother Nature or man hits you a whammy. Right? It's very important to build it. You might be making $1 million from it, but hey, you know how to land on your feet. So we had 10 young people with us that were going through this process. See, kind of stuff you see happening up here quite a lot. It was happening in Trinidad and Tobago, and they had to leave. I cried the day when that happened. I had to tell them, guys, I can't hold you anymore. I was prepared to take my own money to pay them, for a couple of months, but it didn't make sense. No, it wasn't sustainable. That to me was one of the lowest points of the project. Not being accused of anything, it was that moment because
the breaking of the morale.
Exactly. Some have held on, in the periphery, but they've had to move on with their lives. That was, to me, as a loss for the country. It was a serious loss for the country.
It's always good to know the background. It's always good to have insight, especially from the people behind the scenes. And it's not very often that you can sit down with one of the innovators of an original team.
Okay.
And it's good to hear it now directly from such a person, as opposed to the hearsay and the chit-chat that's always so rampant down the line.
Yeah.
So we want to say thank you very much, Dr. Copeland, for taking the time out, literally sitting down and talking with us from all matters, GPAN, FI, the fabric of Trinidad and Tobago, the people, innovation. I think we've covered a lot of ground. We can always say good luck, but we want to wish you the best, because then by default we were doing the same for the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
That's right.
And the steel pan art form. So I would like to say, as the Americans say, thank you for your service to the country of Trinidad and Tobago, and more power to you and your team. Forward. Thank you for sitting and chatting with When Steel Talks.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Okay.
When Steel talks, everybody listens.